Hello. This is my first video, and it's just going to be me reading an essay I wrote on anarchism. It has no sources, but at the moment I believe it to be accurate. This is a critique of anarchism. Not a definite critique of anarchism, but a personal perspective based on my experiences. Let's begin. The following is my view on anarchism, how I think it works, and why I moved on. Anarchists generally have two strong guiding values. The first is their hatred of the state and its functions. The second is their goal of an anarchist society rising up after the state has been overturned. There's a wide variety of anarchistic viewpoints, but these two are what I see in common. Many anarchists see American socialists as having all theory and no practice. True, those who refuse to turn theory into practice are unfit for the job. At the same time, those who practice without theory will find themselves without an effective strategy. But before criticizing anarchism, let me dive into a description of anarchist organizing based on my experience. What is anarchist organizing? There are a lot of aspects here, and I'm going to describe things pretty simply. Anarcho-syndicalist organizing is done through a composition of smaller organizations. Each one of these organizations fights against a state or capitalist power. A set of unions will fight against individual companies. A committee may communicate with incarcerated people and advocate for them. Another committee might exist to protect people against police intervention, etc. Anarchist unions fight against a particular company and its management in a specific location. Within each union, members create a list of demands directed at the company and fight through collective action, pressuring the company to meet their demands. For example, people might walk off the job because of a wage decrease. This practice is called solidarity unionism. In contrast to corporate unions, these unions fight unilaterally on behalf of the workers, finding their power and energy through amplifying the struggles and demands of the workers. Bosses will fight against such unions by any means necessary because they can cause a lot of problems. Companies with strong worker-led unions will lose profits, and they fear failure due to becoming unable to compete with others. They sometimes spend so much on union busting that they implode in the process. They would rather die than live with a union. A single franchise shop that unionizes may close up, amputating from the company in self-defense. This is one element of the ongoing battle that anarcho-syndicalists are waging against the capitalist class. It is believed that the sum of these struggles will lead to an overthrow of capitalism. The thinking is that to organize against individual capitalist entities will eventually overthrow the whole state and then capitalism. Anarcho-syndicalist organizations may also do mutual aid and caretaking work, presumably in preparation for this. Now that I've roughly outlined anarchist practices, let me go into my critique. Let's examine the power source of anarchist practice, hatred of the state and its functions. To an anarchist, any power that can be sufficiently critiqued must be dismantled. Any fault of the state will be echoed, which can make anarchists very useful in dividing the left. Anarchists often become puppets, echoing US propaganda about socialist states like the Soviet Union and China. Unable to move beyond Wikipedia and history class in their understanding of socialism, they latch on to anything with a negative viewpoint. As an aside, I do not mean to say that these states are unworthy of criticism, but that anarchists are quick to echo negative, one-sided information about them, instead of examining multiple perspectives using their own judgment. Since anarchist practice is based on the hatred of the state, they do not adopt the detached perspective needed for rigorous study. They are attached to their suffering and will only seek to amplify it. This is seen in the absolute volumes of agitational anarchist media. In this media, the suffering of the working class is caricatured, drawn out painfully and in great detail, but with no real solution. Building things up this way is seen as an end of its own, that when the working class is made aware of its own suffering, it will become so intolerable that fighting back and eventual revolution is the only possibility. But what revolution? Here is where anarchist goals come into play. In the minds of the staunchest anarchists, a specific sort of revolution is expected. Anarchists are certain of the possibility of anarchistic communism emerging directly from capitalism. Basically, a society where everyone looks out for each other and there's no jobs or cops. There is no doubt that similar goals of collective living are held both by anarchists and Marxists of all varieties. As a child growing up in an individualistic society, many of us use such dreams as a way to soothe the trauma of capitalist reality. To learn that this sort of collectivist vision is shared by others can create a meaningful sense of bonding, but it is a mistake to think that those dreams reflect how people will behave in practice. Anarchist practice and goals are disconnected. Despite their hatred of capitalism, anarchists lack a model of capitalism to fight against, so they fight against the state and its functions. Rather than fighting the disease, they fight the symptoms, so to speak. This is why anarchists adopt the "all cops are bad" slogan, ACAB. As functions of the state, all police are viewed with hatred. Organizing needs to be used against capitalism itself, not just against the state and its functions, and not just against individual capitalist entities or functions. This requires a model of society found through the sum of theory and practice, and not through practice alone. The whole cannot be targeted by fighting against individuals any more than a tree can be chopped down by severing its branches. Contrary to anarchist views, these individual successes do not lead to more great and numerous successes. For example, if the demands of a union to improve working conditions are won, the union will celebrate, but it will lose its momentum, since its momentum is based in those degraded working conditions. When the demands are not won, the union will dismay and have no direction. The more success the union has, the more it will cut into the profits of the company, and the harder that company and other companies will work to fight against unionization. In fact, the harder the law will fight against them too. The gains made by anarchists and unions are not like wildfire spreading, but rather like Sisyphus rolling a rock up a hill for all eternity. The historic gains made by the union movement in America caused the Taft-Hartley Act that permanently hampered unions and still does today. Who is to say what future legislation would target unions if they were to make more progress? Even still, let us assume that solidarity unionism does make a large impact. This does not prove the anarchists' beliefs. There is plenty to be learned by the practice of unionism in interacting with the working class. However, improvement of the conditions of capitalism will not create a revolution, but rather compromise the desire for revolution by softening the contradictions of capitalism. Certainly after conditions are improved, anarchists will find the iron will to continue, but not so with the general population, who will relax into their new mode of living and lose all of their revolutionary potential. Well, a lot of it. Even still, let us assume that these practices will cause a popular overthrow of the state. To dispose of the state on its own will not cause an end to capitalism, but a new, refined capitalist machine to spring up in its place. This is because people are used to capitalism, and their mode of living is based inside of it. Like it or not, the system that is to replace capitalism must retain some of capitalism's elements in order to match the expectations and habits of the people. Where a socialist understands this and will construct creatively around these expectations, an anarchist will toss them out the window and try to construct society with an idealist practice bound to fail. Very recently, I identified with anarchism. I wrote this essay to reflect the things that I've learned since then. Through an absence of theory, anarchism creates a practice that goes by its own theory, one that is surprisingly rigid. Since anarchist practice is based on direct struggle against the state and its functions, it is limited to fighting against those functions instead of capitalism as a whole. Since anarchist goals are based on an idealistic version of human nature, their practice and goals will never meet. If you are an anarchist, get ready to groan because I am telling you to read. Why do you think that's such a popular thing to say? In this case, because it is true. Not reading is a mark of pride for some people. Like, what kind of nihilistic thing are you trying to accomplish? Since Lenin wrote his books, things haven't changed as much as you think. Marx describes the basis for analyzing capitalism that will enable it to be overthrown. Without understanding capitalism, you will never escape it. Do you agree or disagree? Do you think this is an accurate portrayal of anarchism? Let me know. Like this video if it's a good one, and share it to help anarchists see the light. Bye-bye.